Thanks for checking out another episode of the Growl podcast. This was a great conversation that I had. And unfortunately, a portion of it got corrupted at the beginning or something. I don't know what happened. And I lost about the first half hour of this conversation. Luckily, this conversation went on for quite some time, well over 2 hours. So there's plenty to still check out. But I do want to apologize as it's going to kind of jump in mid conversation. Now, it shouldn't be inconvenient as we reference things multiple times in this conversation. It was a great sit down. With the initial few minutes of this conversation being missing, I thought it was relevant to kind of fill in some of the gaps so you guys have a better understanding of some of the parts of this discussion. Robert and I have a lot in common. We share a similar path as far as musicianship and then venturing into the manufacturing aspect of music gear. I spent several years running a guitar company called Blackheart Guitars, which I sold in 2015. From there, I stepped in and launched another guitar company called Legion Guitars. And I was around when Robert got his start with Arachnid Cabinets, and he is still plowing ahead today, doing a wonderful job. So it was a great sit down. Before we get started, I do also want to thank each and every one of you for checking out the podcast, supporting the podcast. I do really appreciate each and every one of you who takes the time to subscribe to the channel. It helps me tremendously. Every time one of you guys subscribes, I can see the difference on how many new faces are actually able to see this material. So if you enjoy what you see, please subscribe, hit that little notification icon so that you get a notification every single time we drop new material. I got some great interviews lined up already here in the next 2 weeks, so it's going to be pretty awesome. So thanks to each and every one of you. I also do have the merch store connected. I know it'll show you little items and whatever in oddball sizes, but there's tons more stuff available on the web store. So go and check that out. Every bit of those dollars helps keep this podcast rolling forward. So I appreciate every single one of you guys for your support. Enjoy the sit down that I have here with Rob Calhoun from Wurm Flesh and Arachnid Cabinets. So first connecting with other musicians, was it a connection through high school? How did you meet people? How did you find musicians that allowed you to finally get a band started?
When I was in Oklahoma, like before I moved back out to California, which is a radical, crazy story in itself. It was definitely school. It's like, Oklahoma is definitely one of those, like when you see a movie about high school, the quintessential jocks, cheerleaders, like nerds, whatever.
The separation.
The separation is real. And I'm not saying that's not like that everywhere, but in Oklahoma, it's really pronounced. Like,
yeah, it was very much that way when I was growing up. I mean, but that's, I graduated in 93. So, like late 80s, early 90s, you weren't both.
Yeah,
that's for sure.
Well, so I went to 1 year at Cabrillo, which is, like I said, Lompoc, Central Coast. And it felt like everyone was a little bit more of a blend, which I've always preferred to be. It never hurts to be someone who can blend in with whoever. Like, I wrestled, but I also skateboarded. And on top of skateboarding, I was in the guitar. So there was like 3 groups, was one thing wasn't my entire personality. So when I first started my first band we'll fast forward to Oklahoma, we started a band called Exit Wound. And it was just kind of kids who were more into like, we're not into Kill Switch Engage at the time. We were all into heavier music, and we tried being thrash metal at first, because that's kind of like, that's where I was at. I wasn't quite being able to play death metal riffs, but I wasn't playing punk riffs anymore either. I was very much, I could play like Rain and Blood, that entire album, except for maybe 1 or 2 songs I didn't care to learn. I learned how to play a lot of Iced Earth riffs. I actually could never do the leads, but I started learning Nevermore songs. So I was having some really good structure with like thrash metal at that time.
Right.
And then come the Great Migration back to California. Before I did that, I was talking to my brother at college because their computers, I could get onto MySpace, which my parents forbade me to have. I was not allowed to have a MySpace. But my brother was starting to introduce me to musicians that were his friends before I even moved out. So I kind of had some people to jam with. Then I put like a MySpace ad out or a Craigslist ad out when I moved back out to California. And my vocalist at the time, Richard, who will become my vocalist, they were in a band called Adder Assassin. And the other guitarist that was like one of the founding members wasn't, I feel bad, he just wasn't that good. He was playing like really immature blues rock riffs. And Caleb asked me, who was my drummer, who became my drummer, he's like, can you play any Black Dahlia Murder type stuff? And I'd only heard a little bit of Black Dahlia. I just knew it was spastic, etc. And I just whipped riffs out of my ass. That's all. I just pulled a bunch of crazy stuff off, and I tried to use as much as my learned skill of how to piece it together coherently. But he was able to blast beat behind it, and then we started Siphon Soul, which every band that I've done, except Exit Wound, because we just called it that, but every band that I've done, which have been my brainchilds, come from Magic the Gathering. So, yeah. There you go. Yeah, I played. Dude, I like I said, I wrestled, I powerlifted, I skateboarded, musician, and I played Magic the Gathering. I fit in a lot of groups. And
yeah. I think a lot of people really do. It just, I think, depending on when you grew up and what, your social circles were like at the time, you get kind of wrapped to where you're only admitting a certain portion of who you really are. Cause I mean, so many people that I grew up with too were into athletics in one form or another, and I was really into football, really into basketball, really into BMX racing and stuff like that. But then extremely into death metal starting in probably, real late 88s, somewhere in there. And it was like banging into these two groups. It just didn't work. Right. So like everyone that I rode bikes with and played basketball with, most of those dudes were on the farthest spectrum from death metal. Yeah. And then anything I was doing musically with death metal guys, those dudes were like, we're not into it. And then now that we're all older, everyone's like, oh, well, I've liked football my whole life. Well, what
yeah.
When we were kids, you just were like, I can't tell anybody.
And this is kind of where the beauty of, as much as it sucked living out in the middle of nowhere, that's where the beauty of going home to nobody other than myself and my parents kind of
be you.
Because I didn't have someone in my ear after I was done with school telling me that shit's gay, that stuff's dumb. Death metal's dumb, wrestling's Magic Gatherings for nerds. No, it's just I went home to doing what I liked, and and that's what happened. But I remember it was just coming to before I moved back out to California, I was starting to clash with my stepmom and my dad a little bit more. I was like 19 in my first semester of college, and I was still like being told that I have to be home by like 8. Like I worked really hard I work full time, get great grades. Like I said, I got regardless of 2 bad letter grades throughout high school, I did, I was a green belt in judo. I did everything my parents asked. And then the whole, like, you still need to be home by 8. Like, come on, we're still going to treat me like I'm 15, 16. Like we're not going to like give me any further things. And I think the nail in the coffin was my stepmom thought she saw me driving, which that's not the biggest deal, but I was going to be gifted my dad's Mustang. He had a 96 Mustang. Not the craziest year, but it was still a really beautiful car. But the rule was I had to kind of call in and check in with where I was going to be, which was always kind of the rule anyways. Like, hey, if you don't come home, we kind of would like to know the last place you're at so we can at least tell cops that's where you were. And, my stepmom swore she saw me driving. and I was at college all day with my music theory teacher and the piano teachers. I was hanging out with the music nerds. And that's when I called my brother and my mom over MySpace and whatnot and said, I want to come back. And I kind of did it in a really shitty way, but kind of the way I needed to do. I lied to my dad to give me a 48-hour window. Like I told him I told him I had final exams. It was like a Friday or a Thursday or something like that. I said I had final exams, and then my buddy Johan was coming back from boot camp for the Marines, which was true. So if he had to double check that, that Johan was coming back from the Marines, he was going to do like a barbecue / everyone chill, crash over. And then that I had work the next day. Now, mind you, this town is an hour north of where I work. So I bought myself about 24 hours already with just the finals, Johan having a cookout / everyone crash over. Bought myself another 24 hours with having to drive back into Texas to work 8-12 hours and then be off. And I basically went to my bank in the morning, grabbed all my money. There were no finals, nothing, I went to my bank, cleared out my $1,800 in life savings, big chunk of change. And I drove into Texas about 30 minutes and got on a Greyhound, threw my parents' keys in the center console. And about 20 hours later, I'm in Albuquerque, New Mexico. And I'm like, hey, Dad, I got something to kind of tell you. Well, what's up? I was like, I'm going back to California. So like, what? I'm like, yeah. And yeah, I packed my life into a guitar case, a rolling suitcase, and a backpack.
Wow.
Yeah. And then I came back out to Sacramento where I was born. Hadn't really talked to my mom in 5-6 years, but I was moving in with her and my brother, who I hadn't really seen in like another handful of years. And a year later, I decided I wanted to move out with my vocalist Richard, and God, that was a nightmare. My mom basically refused to let me leave. She told my brother to come handle me and like fight me and to me, I just like I wanted to fly. I need to be free. Like
right.
And that probably comes from like I said, the ability to have the work ethic, the fact that I was able to get on a Greyhound and not like wet my pants and cry that I'm making a move, probably all stems from my parents' work ethic and the whole living alone and doing what felt right to me, not near my friends. And, my parents kind of, as much as they probably don't want to think about it, they instilled that kind of independent thought in myself. And that whole, we'll see what happens. But whatever happens will be okay, because I think I have a good head on my shoulders. I think I can navigate the waves.
And it is tough as a parent. I will, not that I'm siding with your parents, but I'm just saying, I get it. As a parent, I get it. My oldest daughter right now is pushing very, very hard to, she's an early graduate. She graduated at 16. So she feels like she's 21 by this point, and she's not. She's, she'll be 18 in June. And she's like, well, I'm moving to Florida. And I'm just like, there's a part of me where it's like, I was gone and I was on my own at 14. I was touring with bands at 14. When I was summer of my 14th year, I was gone for 6 weeks on tour in the summer.
Damn.
with 5 other dudes. It was the single best experience. It's the single best worst experience I've ever had in my life. It sucked because I had no money management skills. I had no self-containment skills, but I learned them very quickly, because when you're out there, you just starve unless you figure it out. You know how it goes. I'm sure you've been on the road. But it's like, it taught me a lot. And I know, you raise your kids, like you said, your parents raise you to be strong. They raise you to be independent. They raise you to make strong decisions. And then because you raise your children that way, that's what they're going to do. And it's very hard for me at this point, and as I'm sure it was with your parents, is I want her to go and I want her to spread her wings and I want her to be successful, but I don't want her to go. I want her to stay home because she's my daughter, so I get it.
They'll come home. Me and my dad, we eventually patched things out. I think the biggest heartbreak was coming back out to live with my mom. And that was really, like I said, it was just a stepping stone. I had to learn the city, and it's like, I didn't know, I kind of say this all the time. If I had really good close friends that I knew were situated like in Florida instead, like, hey, we got a house. It's cheap rent. You come out here. I know how to get you a job real quick. I would have done that too. So
Right.
it was more so just the comfortability of I knew my mom was probably gonna give me a little bit of leeway to like at least get acclimated. And dude, I moved out here. I got a job within a month, and
Hmm.
um, it was, but my mom was also my mom. Is something about like, wanting girlfriends and like, hey, you want to come back to my place? You gotta be quiet. My mom's home. You know, it was kind of it was kind of odd. Plus, she bipolar. She was always on prescription meds. My brother was kind of he was a little bit more introverted. We both went through some shit living with our grandparents. So like I understand where he comes from. I think it took him a little bit longer to be a little bit okay, but we have a really good relationship now too. But yeah, my dad and stepmom, we have a great relationship. You know, my dad, when I got Gary Holt on as an artist, he was like, "What kind
Which
of
is awesome. Yeah.
yeah, what do you need?" Obviously, this is years after 19. We're talking in my 30s, so we're talking, over 12, 14 years of mending like relationships where we're back where we're okay again. But
Hmm.
yeah, but back to like when I first moved out here, put a Craigslist ad out, and because that's what you did, man, you put a fucking
Yeah.
Craigslist ad out. Around there was no marketplace, and
No,
you
yeah.
you got what you got with Craigslist. And dude, it was like the most obnoxious thing for the other guitarists, I bet, because I had no gear at the time other than my guitar. And it was very much, hey man, I know we're both trying out to be in this band, but can I borrow your amp to show them why I'm a better choice than you? Um, but this is another ethic to how driven I am. I I got the position because me, Caleb, and Richard had crazy chemistry, and they were like some of the best musicians I've ever worked with at the time. I stupidly went out and got a credit card and got a tattoo and a full stack. That's what I did. I was like, yeah, credit card. I'll get a credit card with a couple $1,000 balance. I'll get a tattoo and a full stack. Duh.
Yeah. Yeah. I remember my first credit card.
Oh,
It's a whole lot of bad decisions, but you know, kind of. It's that same thing where for me, a lot of lessons I had to learn a lot of lessons by falling down. And I took it into my band life and I took it into my business life. That I'm not afraid to try shit, and
can't be.
to go out there, and what's the worst that's going to happen is it's not going to work. And this is gonna I kind of want to start heading down this path now because it's something that I definitely am curious what led you down the road, because I know what led me down the road, and we'll kind of discuss our personal stories here to see how they're similar and how they're different. But going from being a musician to starting Arachnid Cabinets, what was the light bulb that went off for you? Where like, hey man, I think maybe I should try this.
So going from, we'll have to backtrack to Oklahoma just a little bit, but my dad was a gunsmith, and my grandpa was a clock maker. So my grandpa was a woodworker. My father worked with metal, very precise metal work, by the way, especially with firearms. Um, I was winding down skateboarding as I was getting better at guitar, living in Oklahoma, and before buying gear, like, before I really decided to go out there and say, I'm just going to buy it, I attempted to make my first speaker cabinet. I
Hmm.
was like, oh, I'll make it. We got all this, it's a box with some speakers. And we had tons of plywood, just scrap plywood. And sadly, I didn't make a 412. I wanted to, but I only had enough money to buy like two speakers. So I made a 212. It was super shitty, but I attempted. And then, I just, after that, I failed and I bought gear instead. I bought the half stack that I wanted next. It was like a Behringer Vampire Pro or whatever.
Hmm.
But I was doing, but what made me want to do it is I was 23 doing in-home care for developmentally disabled. And I kind of just, it was a night shift, and I kind of fell asleep for a little bit because it was an overnight shift. So I was, you're able to nap a little bit. And I just had this vision about building cabs again. Like I thought back to that first cab that I built and why I wanted to build it, because I couldn't afford a Mesa Boogie at the time. But I woke up, I envisioned the logo in a dream, and it's probably because I love Batman that it makes sense now, because I've had people shit on the logo. It looks like the Batman symbol. I was like, you know what? It kind of does. It's probably because subconsciously I fucking love Batman. Oh yeah, it's another thing about it. I love Batman. I collect Batman shit. So I'm kind of a comic book nerd, but without the comics, more like dope memorabilia and statues and shit. But I drew the logo, and then I talked to my buddy Ryan. I was like, dude, why don't we try this for real? And he was down, and I bought $1,000 dovetail jig after that. Like I went balls deep on because I knew I wanted to dovetail my stuff, and I tried buying this $30 jig thing where you clamp it on the wood, and you can only do like 3 tails at a time, and then you have to unclamp. I built my first speaker cab that way with that jig, and it took me 4 hours to dovetail it.
Oh, wow.
Then I bought the dovetail jig, and it knocked it down to about 30 to 40 minutes to dovetail first time. And then I got to where I could do it in like 20 minutes. Now I have it automated on my CNC machine where it'll do it in fucking 10.
Right.
Less. But that was really it. But I always kind of wanted to do something bigger in the scene as well than just play music. Because some of the guys I was looking up to that were the most prominent names that were kind of getting the most love were like they booked, or they did other stuff, or they were engineers. And I literally initially started booking. It was called Arachnid Productions, and sure enough, I found out I hated it. Everyone's a diva.
Yeah.
I had one guy just talk massive shit to me, even though his band was late. I had one guy come up to me. He's all like, "Are we getting paid?" I was like, "No, you didn't bring anybody. Plus, your drummer thinks he's fucking Dave Lombardo from Slayer, like he's special or some shit." So I stopped booking bands, especially after I had a couple really bad fallouts with like I had a venue, then the venue pulled or whatever for a festival I was doing, and it just fucking I was like, I can't have that kind of stress on my shoulders. So, speaker cabinets. So my love of just building, and I'm not gonna lie, I have one. I gotta go find the shell, but I'm like I'd probably be really decently still impressed with the first shell, because I did my best to do quality things with it early on. Jigs for handles, and I was really big into all that, and I don't know what continued to drive me, because I wasn't making a lot of money doing it, but I was spending a lot of money doing it.
Right.
And I made a goal for myself, though, to like continue to push myself. I said, when I started the business, I said, if I can make it to NAMM, which is the North American Musical Merchant Convention, if I can make it within 5 years and my product be accepted, I know I'm on the right path. And then I lost my job. Then I had to move in with my old, I had a daughter at this time, and my daughter's mom, we were all together. We had to move into someone's basically house and share a room. I was still trying to push the cabs. Then we eventually got into our own apartment where I was doing the cabs at my partner's house, his garage. And then I eventually split with my daughter's oldest mom. And my partner at the time basically said, hey, man, if we're not doing anything, you got to come get your stuff. And I get my stuff from his house, and I started building in my apartment. And this is all within probably a 9-month span, man.
So what year are we talking?
We're talking 2013-ish.
Okay.
So 2012, 2013-ish.
So it's probably pretty close around that time when I think we first probably had our, this is back when because I started Blackheart in 2010.
Oh,
so I know, yeah.
Yeah.
So it would have been somewhere probably 2012, 2013, maybe that we kind of, maybe
you know what?
around that time.
I think I'd like to think you were probably a little bit more farther along with Blackheart than I was Arachnid, because I mean, you were already having production, you were getting stuff produced, so I felt like you had stuff in the works longer than I did.
Yeah, and I remember everything at that point when I would hear about another, small company popping up, it always really excited me that a younger independent, I think at that time it was really, there really wasn't, the smaller companies getting involved in things. The smaller guitar companies weren't there. The smaller cab companies, the smaller head companies, none of that stuff was there. I mean, if you were buying stuff, you're buying one of the big four companies, or one of the subsidiaries. So every time, you'd see another one of these companies come up, it was, for me, it was always like, man, I wish I could support everybody, but you can't. But it's basically spreading the word for everybody and trying to figure out how to support everybody. And unfortunately, and I'm not going to name anybody, but a lot of people didn't see it that way. And I think you probably know what I'm talking about, where, it's, you get shit on pretty hard for trying to do something to contribute.
Fuck, dude. I remember, who was also kind of disrupting the game at the time too that I liked. I wish they could continue, but Madison was kind of like a new kid on the block too. Even though he was definitely older cat, older than I was. But like Madison had just a couple years before I was wanting to do a rack, Madison had popped up, and they were like the hottest. Like it was such a flash in the pan, though. Sadly,
yeah, I did some stuff with him at NAMM, in Nashville, and in, I think, both in Nashville and Anaheim. But it was, not to talk bad about anything, but it's, I think when you get into it, and especially when you start to get a little bit of attention and things start to kind of go a certain way, it's not always what you think it's going to be. It's a tough business. It's a really tough business. And, where you can go through as a musician and your fans aren't always right, because you're the musician, you're the one making the fucking rules. And then as now, as a business owner, you're satisfying people. That is the bottom line of what you're trying to do.
Yeah, but think about it, man. Everyone's a goddamn engineer. Everyone's a luthier. Everyone is a electronics engineer. And I got told, you're never going to be Mesa. Why do you think you can charge remotely close? And I was like, well, then especially after I moved to 18 mil Baltic Birch and whatnot, it's like, okay, so the only difference between me and Mesa is, some minute dimensional things, and they're a Celestian, user. I said, their shit's butt jointed too. They're not doing anything. Well, they dovetail some stuff, and they're custom shop stuff. That's for their amplifiers and their furniture grade stuff. Yeah, they dovetail that, and you're gonna pay $3 to $4 grand for that, because it's got Mesa's name stamped on it. And not to talk bad about Mesa, they have their place. So I actually gotta sort of weirdly thank them. I got a customer because Mesa said I was like one of 5 companies that they knew that would probably make a custom head shell for a Mark IV amplifier combo. So I'm on their radar in a good way, where they would bring me out. So like I said, I don't want to badmouth them, but it's like, no one's really got secret sauce when it comes to any of this stuff, man. I've learned early on, cabs do a handful of things. They don't color the tone. All they do is they create a healthy environment for the magnetic induction of that speaker, magnet, and coil to move in a healthy way that it was designed. So the box is meant to be airtight to let the speakers move the way the magnetic induction is supposed to. Second, just be jointed and built in a way that can be thrown in and out of a U-Haul, a million for 20 years and not fall apart. That's really all you can really ask for a cabinet, is it be built well and it be built in a way that lets those speakers move in a healthy manner. Tons subjective. I think I think a lot of things people don't realize is quality is kind of an objective thing. It's not as subjective, because you could master carpenters, like, let's just take cabinets, because people could nitpick guitars all day, but cabinets, it's a box at the end of the day, right? It's all you can do is choose a really good material and join it really well and do some, and brace it up and frame it up for support. Throw that along with a Mesa, an orange shell, throw that to a master carpenter. They're all going to be like, yeah, like that dovetail joinery is better than a butt joint. You take a Marshall 1968 cab, they're like, the finger joining is better than a butt joint, but the dovetail is still more superior.
Mm-hmm.
But like I said, it's going to be subjective whether or not you like the tone or not. So to be honest, all I can do is go out there and, backline festivals, keep doing NAMM, make IR packs. When I bring artists on, let them, be very open to meeting with people who might live in your area who might want to try your cab. We'll make sure they're not weirdos, but be willing to let someone maybe at a show use your cab, etc. And there's only so much you can do, but
yeah. And I think a huge part of the longevity of what you're doing and the name growth and recognition for what you're doing obviously is a 2-layered deal. So you do produce a quality product, and that has proven itself, but the backing on being visible and being grounded in the industry itself, having a face, having a musician running the company, that's the one thing that I've always pushed with both Blackheart and Legion is it's run by musicians.
Yeah,
we're just here to make the industry better.
Exactly. I tell people all the time, bro, I'm in the trenches with you. We got a deal to play this festival. We didn't realize we were tied in with, I'm not going to name the other band, but we were tied in with a bigger band of our genre. They dropped, and but before they dropped, we were offered a $500 guarantee. We were offered flights, food, hotel, all of our ground transportation. Then the other band dropped, and then all of a sudden, we don't want to pay that much money for them. They're not worth it. And I was like, so we were when we were attached. But I know what it's like to fucking get a shitty deal and still be expected to say yes after terms. Not getting paid. Driving a Tahoe with a U-Haul, and us not having enough money to each get a hotel. So it's like, all right, who's shacking up in what bed with who, and doing that whole thing. One person's under the covers, one person's on top, but they're still blinking.
Right.
I'm in the trenches with everyone, man. I'm still trying to make a name for myself in music, and I'm still trying to do my best where I don't. Sometimes I want to separate the two. I want to be known for just like Wurm Flesh. Like I was talking with one of the gentlemen who's an artist relations for Seymour Duncan, and we're hanging out at the Hilton at NAMM, and I said, look, I know I do cabinets, but our band is growing. We're with management now. We're with booking agency, etc. I said, if you ever feel you see the appropriate growth as a musician and it made sense to tie our names to each other, reach out when you think that time comes. I didn't want to be like, since I have a company, Arachnid Cabinets. No, it's like when you think my name is good enough as a musician to be tied to Duncan, reach out. Because this gentleman I've seen, his name's Artie as well. He's a really nice guy. And we've talked like 3 or 4 NAMMs in a row. And so, like I said, I did my best to be like the merit of my music and where I'm at as a musician. Like sometimes I want to be judged off that as well. The cabinet company is a really great way to get your foot in the door for festivals. Like, hey, I'll backline a festival, and also I promise my band doesn't suck.
Right. It is weird. I feel you. It is weird. And I think, because you end up with a tenfold connection ratio because of running a business. You know, the people that I was able to connect with and now build musical relationships with as a result of owning Blackheart and Legion. I mean, I wouldn't probably have those connections, you know, from, not going to start name dropping, but you know what I mean? It's just the people that guest on records and shows you're able to do. But to me, where I've gotten is, you know, I've been playing in bands for 35 years.
Yeah.
I've been running a music-based business since 2010 in 2009, basically. And where I've gotten to the point is I used to really focus on that, is like my musical career is on this page and then my business is on this page. And then I gotten to the point where it's like, you know what? It's all your resume. It's all who Robert is. And one makes the other better both ways. You know what I mean? It makes you more knowledgeable. It makes you better understanding of what makes both sides of the industry work. And so if I was you, I'm not going to tell you how to think and feel, but if I was you, you know, yes, you want to be recognized as a musician, but don't try to separate the two, because they are both you and they're both very powerful tools, you know. And, you know, where I've gotten is, man, I'll leverage one way or another to do whatever it takes to make the connections I need to make. You know, and I've worked long and hard to get those things done, and you have too. I mean, for you to stick with both of those fields as long as you have, you've earned them both. So I think you need to kind of kick that shit out the back of your head, because that's not.
I appreciate that. Sometimes I get in my head about that. It's like, you know, is it tacky to be like, you know, hey, I got this company, but then again, I use it to like, hey, you know, we don't suck. I promise you, like, we put on a very professional, tight live show. You know, I tell people, you know, younger kids who, you know, when they come see us now, which is, you know, I've always said, you know, our peers, they're going to respect us, but they're not going to be overly enamored with us. It's the kids that are still digging the way we used to dig. You know, that we're now those guys that when we were 19 looking up, you know, like, oh my God. I'm trying to think of a couple bands in the area that we were all like enamored with, but like I had to say it the other day, I was like, we're now those bands, dude. Like we were 19, 18, and those bands that were like 10 years our senior that were tight as fuck. And we're like, holy fuck, these dudes are next level. I said, we're kind of that band now. Not saying, you know, we still have miles to go, tons of work. We still have maturing to do, of course. There's always, you know, new things to learn with our instruments. But I said, we're kind of there now, guys. Like, you know, now we're the band these kids are looking up to. And I tell, you know, where was I going with this? But, you know, I do my best to... Oh shit! I was so right there, man. I was about to piece the thoughts together. But,
I feel you though. It's like, you know, it's hard to kick it out of your head too, because sometimes I think about this, like when you kind of touched on it, as far as like feeling like when we started these companies way back, that it was a dream. It was kind of an ambitious thing to fulfill something that I wanted. There was guitars I wanted. So the only way I was going to get them is to be building them.
Yeah.
And I have that. Yeah. So I had that vision in my head, like, oh, I'm just this little guy that whatever. But then, you know, 2,000 guitars later, I am not just that guy, but I am in my head.
Yeah.
But it's more than that to everybody outside of that envelope. And I think your business has long since passed that too, to where people don't think about it as, oh, this guy just builds cabinets because he wants his band to play. I think they're thinking like, that's running a business is no fucking joke. And if you're going to invest the money it takes to do what you do, I think we're all to that age right now where we realize like, oh, that's, you know, it's a labor of love and it's a passion and it's, you know, it's some serious shit to keep the gears rolling every single day.
Well, I want made in America to kind of mean something. Like,
absolutely.
You know, I feel like there's always this vicious cycle with the legacy brands. When their first 30-ish years, they're all strong. But then what happens? They get bought out. And they don't get bought out with people who have the same passion. Sometimes they do. Maybe the first buyout is still real, still a company that's really passionate about the music gear and the customer musician product experience. Then by the time the third, fourth buyout is, it's all right, how do we slap this brand on hats, keyring chains, t-shirts, headphones, how slippers, like, how do we become a clothing brand now, and like I take a look at my product, birch, I can't, sadly it's got to come from the wood's got to come from Russia. It's got to be processed in the Baltic states, your Lithuania, hell, even Finland is part of that for some reason. So I can't help where birch comes from. It's just America doesn't produce it enough. But Eminence, even though they got bought out by an Italian company, the factory is still in Kentucky. So it's still an American-made product, American designed, just now financially backed and owned by a company in Italy. But still American-made. Neutric, which are makes all my little speak on quarter inch checks. They're made in like a little country like Bulgaria, a little something outside of Germany. So that. But beyond that, Penelcum's an American company. They got factories in America, and it's an American product. Acrotech makes Duratex, which is the coating I use, which it can either be black or all those fun colors that you've seen me do. That's all Duratex. They're made in Florida. I mean, it's mixed in Florida. Eric and Mickey are great people. Eric is the one who like mixes stuff. He's like the mixologist, and he told me some really fun, dope things are coming with Acrotech. That's all made in Florida. And if I do like the art mesh or steel mesh, I get that from a local metal supplier in down the road 15 minutes. And I until I get my own banner printer, when I can have a shop that's conducive to having a banner printer in a clean environment, I give money to another local small business. So a lot of that money stays here,
right?
Believe it or not, in my Sacramento area, only in California, even because Penelcum's in California. So a lot of my money stays in state or in city, and only a little bit goes out. So it's small business supporting small businesses, or slightly larger. And I think as you touched on, as you keep doing it, initially it sucks, man. I'm pretty sure you had tons of people tell you weren't Jackson, you weren't ESP. How you do that? And I got told, man, you're not Mesa, you're not Marshall. What the fuck makes you think you could ask for $800 for a cab? What makes you your those LED lights are effing ridiculous. What is this, an EDM show? It's like, you're not making fun of me, man. I'm sorry I engineered a dope option. You're making fun of the customer who wants it.
Right.
I just created a channel for it.
Yeah, I think it's tough. It is the single toughest thing about, and I'd say like one of the negative traits that comes out of extreme music being kind of an exclusive club is that people covet and they protect the entire scene as if it's their own. And the shit talking that happens as a result, I don't think a lot of people realize the damage it does. And, the people that, I've known a lot of people that have ran small businesses manufacturing one thing or another, from guitar straps to guitar picks, that completely just said, including the dude at Madison, where he's just like, fuck you guys. If you're not going to treat me like and I get it, because there was a lot of times where, it's a learning curve running a business. It is a learning curve developing your product. There's going to be mistakes made. It's a matter of how you're correcting your mistakes and what you're doing to move forward. And I've had a lot of customers who are very supportive of that fact. And I will always take care of my people. I don't give a fuck what business I'm in. And I know you're the same way. If there's a problem, let me fix it.
Yeah.
And, and it's like, what do we got to do to have it be that this death metal globe supports itself? And that's by having businesses like you, me, Ola, a lot of these guys who are building specifically for these musicians,
Yeah, we'll think about it, man. I don't want to name names either, but they're obviously a huge band. And I was having breakfast one morning, obviously with the drummer and a couple friends. And this was a little bit after I think COVID was still kind of happening, but like everyone was like letting up the restrictions. And this was in Reno. Their vocalist was sick. We were talking about how his endorsements, this drummer's endorsements, how DW endorses him, and he was talking about once upon a time DW would have never looked his fucking way because the genre wasn't worthwhile. Well, how's this death metal drummer gonna fucking make us money? Because DW, I guess, is known for a lot of jazz cats and like hip hop dudes. And he was like, when finally DW started, I don't know if they got fresh blood in the agency or in the company. I don't know what happened, but he said DW started looking our way finally. I think I heard Meinl was similar for a long time too. Meinl would not publicly push you as a death metal guy. I mean, Peisty was pushing George Clyde's for, but Meinl was one of those companies that won it. And now look, John Longstrength is all over the Meinl channel. That kid, the drummer from Lorna Shore, is on the Meinl channel. Some other brands, they don't realize this is the evolution of rock and roll. Just for some reason, everyone was willing to give Guns N' Roses and Motley Crue a chance. And for some reason, that's where the train stopped. A little bit of Metallica once they did the Black Album and some Pantera, maybe Slayer if you got lucky, depending where you lived. But for some reason, we're not taking risks on the next evolution of rock and roll any further than this. Even though we took giant leaps on this, once upon a time, Motley Crue was abrasive as fuck. Guns N' Roses was abrasive as fuck. It's weird to think like that, but I can sort of think time and place. Like once upon a time, you were listening to Prince and Huey Lewis in the News, and then, Rain and Blood came on. You heard that, somehow you heard that, and, but that's like I said, no one wants to take, like, extreme metal is the next evolution. Just everyone stops seeing, it'd probably be bigger if people put more time into it. Like I don't know why Lamb of God can't be on normal rock and roll radio now.
Right.
Like Lamb of God's kind of like one of those bands we would all say, that's not that brutal. But once upon a time, when you're digging in your journey and you haven't discovered Mayhem yet, or you haven't discovered, Dying Fetus, that's, you're lucky that was getting some play on MTV, and it's a gateway. It was one of those gateway bands.
Yeah,
but
and I do think in extreme music is an anomaly in its own right within the music globe. It is that it is basically one of the only self-sufficient underground music genres there is.
Yeah,
I'd say probably death metal and extreme metal for sure is the strongest. Hip hop probably has a good foundation underground.
Yeah.
And maybe some modern folk country that within the last handful of years. But outside of that, all of those individual things are so fractured and segmented, where death metal is a global structure still. Yeah. And I think that's why a lot of these other companies are now starting to circle back and be like, it's lasted the test of time. It isn't going anywhere. Yeah. And maybe these guys have something. And it's that, and I think that's where that endorsement structures are finally, you're starting to see, longtime guys and people circling back.
Like, oh, these guys are in it to win it. They're not like, look at the trends that kind of happen every 7 to 10 years. You had that screamo post-hardcore thing, and now that maybe 2 bands survived. Right. Mm-hmm. And then you had the deathcore, the early and like the mid 2000s, 2012 deathcore. And then you had this resurgence of slam come through. And what ends up happening is only one or two bands out of those stick, but at the end of the day, the guys trying to do like is true to the core death metal, they seem to survive. Everyone's like, oh, that little phase of the extreme metal umbrella is gone. Like the stuff my wife likes listening to. She likes listening to the Used. She likes listening to AFI. And she likes listening to a couple other bands like that. And if you look at it today, only like AFI is still doing something kind of relevant. I think Burt McCracken's kind of the only guy who's relevant out of that genre that had hundreds of bands playing the Vans Warped Tour era, so to say, and I think at the root of it, our genre that we love, it's so fucking rock solid.
Yeah.
As much as some things fractionate off of it, that core is never going to fracture itself.
Yeah, I have a term for that I always use because I'm just a roots guy, big time. I'm a '90s death metal guy, and whenever the topic gets brought up amongst like friends and acquaintances, and we're going, is leaves fall off every year, and the roots will always be here. That's so that's what I tell everybody all the time, and it's just the roots will always be. It's what holds the tree there, So, so touching on something that I kind of want to loop back to is it was a nightmare for me. I'd say 80% of the time, and curious how it is for you. But endorsements, dealing with endorsements, dealing with artists, dealing with.
Do we want to start with the early where you're just kind of like you're giving out deals just to get the product out there, or like
it's a confusing road, ain't it?
Yeah. So I remember, my first handful of endorsements were basically like, guys who were actually, I thought, maybe I didn't think so much of what I was doing musically because we were still maturing as well and we were still growing. So it's like, how can I judge your band when my band isn't doing that yet either? But then again, I run the company. I have every right to expect more from you than what I'm capable of doing because the band is, I don't have control over the other 3, 4, 5 people in the band. I have control over me. But, I had that weird mindset, like, I'm not doing a lot. Why should I judge these guys? But that was probably a bad mindset to go. But I made good friends because of that. But let's get back to the core of it, right? I initially was just kind of giving discounts to anybody that looked like they were doing something worthwhile. You're in the same boat as me. You're playing small fests. You're traveling a lot. You're at least playing a lot of shows. Okay, that's worthwhile to me. That was a discount. And then I was constantly trying to improve the product. That was tough because you're improving the product and all these people are just like, why is that on my cab? How can I put that on my cab? I'm like, I don't know how to send it. Like, it's not like it's a pedal or something where it's easy to ship back in the mail. You'll have to buy another cab. But I used to beat myself up how to figure out this new thing that I'm doing now, how can I potentially give it to somebody with a cab already, with them having little to no skill of building or doing any sort of woodwork? I mean, people don't know how to work a drill. It's scary.
Right.
Like, do you have a drill? No. Like, what do you mean you don't have a drill? Don't you do like car work? Like, don't you fix anything in your house? Like, or apartment or whatever? Like, a basic tool. Like, to me, it's so weird that if you don't have a drill, I don't know why.
Right.
But then as I was getting, the years go on, the first NAMM, I start getting companies backing me. It's making it easier. I'm probably really generous with my first couple endorsements. And then it became a nightmare when I started holding people accountable. Like, it really became sort of a really big nightmare. At first, it was like easy. Like, I'm just giving some friends some discounts. They're doing good stuff. But I brought on my buddy Robbie as a co-owner, and he kind of swept house and said, we're working hard to make a better product, and that better product is bringing in bigger names And those bigger names you're going to be associated with by proxy because you also are technically artists. We need, and I shit you not, dude, we weren't asking a lot from people. We need better photos on a regular basis. We need some sort of video content. If you have a new iPhone, get a $15 stand and take some video. You know, clean up your space. Go to your rehearsal space. Talk about the product. We need something. Some people are like, "Oh, I'm you know, you got Gary, you got Sammy, you know, Ron Kachnik is coming on over."
Awesome.
You know, he's actually his cabs are like in the end phase. They're at my clean room. I have to just Duratex his baffles and then put on his cloth mesh and assemble everything.
Yeah, Ron's rad. He's a good dude.
He seems really good, and he's always pushing the brand. Even though he hasn't had his calves, but he's had the IRs. But yeah, dude, we had so many people be like, "Cool, we understand. The brand is getting bigger. You're doing more professional things. You're putting a lot more money into doing it. Like NAMM's not cheap. They realize that, and once they've gotten a taste of NAMM, like the ones we have invited, they're like, "Oh shit, okay, we can see why Rob and Robbie are asking these things of us. They're in a very serious environment with lots of people that are potentially, which you never know who's eyeballing you. I've learned that.
Oh, for sure.
You never know who's looking at you. And then one day you find out someone huge wants to come work with you. But I said, dude, I mean, do you think anybody with an endorsement, like, I don't know, let's just take like Steve Vai with Ibanez. Do you think Ibanez would have gotten far if off one photo of Steve Vai back in the day when he was maybe with his universe? No, they're like, we constantly need dope photos of you live with our product. So people are like, fuck yeah, like Steve Vai's sick. Keeps the product relevant. Like, oh, that's old. Like, you know, that's old. They're not relevant anymore. Like, you know, you need constant hip material, you know, and I'm not great at it either, but it's good enough to like for the companies that at least push me.
Right.
You know, like every time I've shared anything with Futone, Adam always shares it. So you know,
it's for me, it was I went through the same thing, almost the exact same path. So when you're starting, it's like getting anyone to buy into what you're doing is the fear in your head. Like, is my next door neighbor going to give two shits? Is my best friend going to give two shits? And then when you finally start working with artists, it's what do I got to do? Because as you know, as a business, I'll do whatever I got to do to get my name out there.
Yeah.
And then as it grew and I ended up with a pretty fat roster,
you had some shit, bro. You had Damian Lesky, bro.
I had a lot of good ones, man. And
I was so jealous. Like, fuck, how do I get there? But yeah,
I got to the same point, right? So you get there and you're like, okay, now that the boat's full, what am I doing wrong? Because you're always doing something wrong. So how do you adjust and grow? And I had to sit back and really analyze endorsements. And there was a lot of guys that I brought on, some bigger names that I brought on that I had to address as well. And the way I had to wrap my head around it is just think like, what really is an endorsement? What does it mean? Yeah. And it means two different things to two different people. So it means one thing to the artist and it means a whole different thing to the business. And being both, for the way I wrap my head around it, is it's an advertisement. That's all it is.
Yeah.
You are a walking advertisement for my company.
Yeah.
And if you can't advertise, what's your worth?
Yeah.
And so I have some minor art, like Ron was, not that Ron's a minor artist, that's not what I'm getting at, but comparatively to some of the other guys I had, he didn't have the recognition, but he has the ambition. Yeah. And the knowing, like, I need to market myself as an individual, which has gotten Ron into some better positions in the last handful of years too, because he does that.
All over social right now. He seems like Dean's really pushing him hard right now, or he's also pushing Dean hard. So I mean,
that's it.
Yeah,
that's just it. Is especially in this day and age when you were saying, you know, get out there, get your camera in front of yourself to shoot a couple videos, put it on social media. It is
dude, for like 20
market
bucks,
yourself.
$20 per band member, you can have a pro photographer. Hell, you could be helping some kid out who's really good with a camera, but they really need more. They also need money for the better lens, for the better carrying case, for the better batteries. And sometimes you want to hire. I have some homies that are top dollar that I paid good money for, and we have some homies from the other in parts of the other band where they're like, I just need $60. I'm trying to live photography is different than taking photos of something still or posing, because we're moving. There's a whole different technique, but it's like, dude, like, you're telling me your band as a whole doesn't have like $20 each to hire a photographer? And I'm not trying to dig into people's pockets, but it's like, you want to be endorsed by a company. You want a product to represent you. You want to represent a product. Like, you should know that's going to come with a little bit of something,
Yes.
in return for being a great walking billboard. And hopefully your friends make orders off me, when things on my end get cheaper. And I tell people, like, I'm still growing. Like, we'll talk privately after this, but I'll tell you some things I'm trying to work on. But it's like, eventually the whole idea is, when I am at that level of Ibanez, Mesa Boogie, to where, like, you know what? I can give away product. It's not going to disrupt. I'm not going to take food off my table by doing it. I can write off on my taxes free and clear because I'm making X amount a year. Nothing's ever free, but like, I'll be able to be more generous when this thing does blow up the way.
Right, but you're buying advertising.
Yeah,
that's my point. Is when you're endorsing somebody, you're paying for advertising. Yeah. Like every guitar I gave away, which wasn't very many, everyone that I did give away there had to be a benefit for me doing that, because I'm not building instruments to give them all away.
Yeah, it's tough. And I've had to tell some people, like, I've done some for ridiculously cheap. We're talking, I probably even went out of pocket for parts, but that's one of those things where you're saying the growing pains of endorsing, like, what am I doing wrong? And part of it for a while is me not thinking my product is worthwhile enough that I have to practically give it away. Right. And then keep learning, you know what, you built something worthwhile. These people obviously want it. I don't have to, like, piss my wife off to get something, and I can be reasonable. And we opened up a show for a band I mentioned earlier, and he gave me a little advice. He's the vocalist of the band, and he said, back in our heyday when we were all over MTV, and he's like, we're on all the music magazines, we're everywhere, which he's not lying, because I listened to them. They were all over MTV. He said our manager hit up Mesa Boogie one day and said, this band is the biggest band right now. They're everywhere. They're on the Battle for Ozfest thing. They're always headlining Ozfest. They got 5 music videos out right now, 2 albums. They're charting. Can we get more than 25%? And Mesa Boogie said Metallica doesn't even get 25%. Or like Metallica doesn't get better than 25%. And that put it in perspective. I need to stop, you need to stop giving away your product. Even though you would love to hook everyone up. You might lose the sale or the interest, but anybody who would fight you over 5% is probably not really that interested in your product to begin with.
I absolutely agree. I got very, very jaded when it came to endorsements. For one, I think I just did way too much of it. And when I started Legion, I don't know if you've looked at all. Have you seen how many artists I have on Legion?
No, I don't think I have. For some reason, Legion doesn't, because I know Legion exists, but I assume you don't have a ton. Just like
zero, not a single one. And I should, but it's that thing where it was the one thing that I fucking hated the most. No, it'd be the second thing that I hated one is all the shit talkers, and then two is dealing with artists who think they deserve more than what they deserve. And by that is really there's only a small skimming layer across the top who deserve free shit or are worth that investment, in my opinion. Everything else is work. And those who don't understand that, as a musician, if you don't understand it, if I look at and say, well, I've got 2 albums out and they're doing really well and I'm touring the country or whatever, ESP owes me, guess who doesn't deserve anything? Me. Because that attitude is the absolute fucking worst attitude in the world. But that's the attitude you get nonstop, is like, well, my band's doing this. It's like, well, that's great. Well, I'm trying to run a business. You as a musician are trying to run a business. It's the same thing. Do you give your fucking records away to everybody? Do you give your shirts away from everybody? Do you play shows for free? Do you travel around the world for nothing? Who pays for your gas? You're doing it because you're trying to scratch out a living. And
oh my God. And what they don't understand is, so I'm gonna tell you a story that actually ties into that I deserve X type of thing. We had one artist, oh God, they weren't necessarily a guitar player or bassist, but I was starting to dabble with like lyric monitors and other things like that. And we talked about maybe I can make a vocal monitor for them type deal.
Mm-hmm.
And we told them we could only do like 15% or something like that. And they came back to us like, well, we work with a company called CAD and they give us like 60%. Can you match that? I'm like, that's a fucking Chinese made microphone. Mm-hmm. They can give you 90% off and still make a fucking shit ton of money with the margins of how much they're paying to have it made over in China. Like, this is a hand built item that, you know, you can only, to make it more affordable, the only way to make cab more affordable is to go from a 412 to a 212 to a 112. Mm-hmm. Like, it's still, so, and think about those cabinets. They still have 8 corners total, right? It still takes 412 to 112. It still takes 8 corners. It still takes 2 handles. It still takes the same amount of input jack, which I'm not using cheap shit, man.
Right.
The Neutrik combo jacks are like $350 each. And the plate itself is a $3 plate. That's with my product discount. So for being a manufacturer. So you talk about like the jack plate dish alone is $10. I don't have any more room to wiggle on that. I'm already I'm getting the corners for 50 something cents each, you know. Luckily, there's no more wiggle room on that. Birch, God, dude, during the pandemic and the height of the Russian conflict, birch shot up from $70 to 60, $70 a sheet to over 200. I had one supplier who couldn't carry it anymore. And I was paying $190 for birch. And I've told everyone that I didn't catch on for a year. Almost. That Mesa Boogie, Friedman, and everyone shot their cab prices up to $1,600 or more, and I was still at like $1,200. I was like at $1,199 or $1,200, like $1,250, and I held out for a full year out of ignorance, and then a little bit more of me trying to, like, you know, hey, people are spending their money, they're getting these stimulus checks, and I eventually couldn't do it anymore. I had to shoot up to like $1,500 for a cab, and then what happened? The conflict didn't resolve, but it's obviously isn't such a roiling boil. And, you know, and birch came back down to $90 a sheet. What did I do? I dropped back down to $13.99. Now I think I had to go back up to $14.99 or $14.49. So I'm like $14.50. What Mesa all those companies do? Stayed the same. They're not making anything different. Then I at least dropped prices back down for a base model. And it's, people don't realize I don't have, you know, like when you buy from us small guys, you know, like I said, they want free. They don't realize how much we're dealing. Like, how much we're dealing with manufacturers. We're not getting great pricing at first. There's only so many ways you can cut corners, particularly goddamn cab.
Which is what they don't want you to do. They don't want you to cut corners.
Yeah.
Because they want the premium.
It's like, at least on a guitar, rosewood doesn't cost as much as ebony. So you can at least do a quality rosewood fretboard. I don't know the
you're kind of locked in.
Yeah. You can get a Chinese Floyd if you want people to hate your guitars and Floyd Roses altogether. Never touched one, but you could, at least you could slap a Goto in there and it'd still be quality and still not cost $300. There's at least options for guitars. You don't get a crazy paint job, black, red, blue, whatever color is. No binding. Binding versus no binding, purfling versus no purfling. Nickel versus stainless steel. You'll get nickel on a more affordable guitar.
Mm-hmm.
A cab, dude, there's nowhere to budge and cut corners other than get a 212 if you can't afford a 412. Because other than the driver amount, it takes the same amount of hardware.
Right.
And maybe less Durtex and less drivers. But it's still someone asked me, when are you gonna come out with a budget-friendly Gary cab? I'm like, what do you want me to like? I can't. It's like parts cost what they cost. An economically friendly Gary cab is still going to take the same amount of time to build as Gary's. Just I've learned to accept. I'm not an entry level product.
Right. And you can't be. You honestly can't be.
Yeah.
You're not going to build a name for yourself. So taking this, we'll jump into some of the positives of the business, right?
Yeah.
So there's obviously struggles and there's stresses, but there's obviously a lot of positives that keep you doing it and keep me doing it. And I think those are the relationships that you build. And as you grow, connecting with bigger, stronger profiles in the industry. And you've, over the last couple of years, you've done a great job on being able to make those connections. Let's talk about some of the endorsements you got, some of the signature stuff you got going on, and how that's affected your business.
First off, Sammy Dway, first big name that came onto the company. And that was just from happenstance, going to pick Goat Whore up from the airport, knowing that their management was not happy that my cabs are backlining this festival. I was backlining the Hard Rock Casino Hotel, and Wurm Flesh was playing, of course, as well. 2017, I think, or 2016. The promoter, Josh Leese, who's a really cool friend of mine, said, someone needs to go pick up Goat Whore. I'm too busy. I was like, put me in, coach. Then Sammy was like, are you the Arachnid Cabinet guy? I'm like, yeah. He's like, I was like, yeah, I kind of heard that you guys aren't too happy. He's like, yeah, well, it's like, these cabinets better sound good or you'll never hear the end of it. Like, that's how Sammy, like, he was busting my ball. He was friendly about it, but he was busting my balls. And then during their set, dude, and he hates PV. He'll tell you that he hates PV with a vengeance. So not only are my cabs backlining the stage, he's got to play through a PV. But during the set, he was like, oh my God, that Black Sabbath tone. And he fucking hits a fucking natural harmonic and like just fucking dives his whammy. Wow! It's like, oh my God, And so I knew he was at least happy with what he was hearing for his performance. And then a couple of years later, I get the phone call. Company X ain't taking care of me anymore. They told me you get what you get. Just be happy. And so Sammy came on board. And I'd already tried to write Gary a couple times because I found out he was local to me to see if he wanted to try the cabs. But he was not. I don't want to say he was ignoring me, but I'm pretty sure he gets messages from fucking everybody.
Right.
So Sammy is getting a cab. Next thing you know, Gary reads my messages. He's like, when did you message me before? I'm like, because I wrote him like, hey, if you don't answer, read this again. I'm not going to bother you. You're busy, I'm sure. But, yada, come check out the cabs if you ever have time. So, but once Sammy obviously comes on board, Gary obviously I think is going through his messages and recognizes it and says, could you build me a custom rack case for like amplifiers and rack gear? I was like, yeah, I could do that. And then the conversation was evolved into why Eminence? And I told him because Celestian has no relationship with me, or they haven't reached out. I don't know how to reach out to them without sounding weird, or I'm still kind of in my mind about that. And Gary's like, we'll change that. So then Gary comes and looks at my personal cabs, and I said, do you want to play him? He's like, no. He's like, these are going to sound great with Celestians. Then he puts me in touch with Celestian. So I already had Eminence on the plate for my first NAM, that's exciting. The first NAM, I told you I had a vision. I said I wanted to do NAM within the first 5 years of being a business, and that would help keep me, that would still drive me. I made it within 3 years. And my product already caught Eminence's attention to where they gave me, authorized dealership from there on out. So, like you said, exciting things that kind of kept driving you. All right, here's Eminence. And then a year or two later, Gary gets me with Celestian. All right, now I'm with Celestian. And then Acrotech brings me on as a authorized retail. So now I'm getting stuff for really cheap now. Now I'm getting drivers like better than even my discount on Parts Express. So you got to think these are the things that are like they're driving me like, okay, we're making some waves, big names, companies are giving me better discounts. And then Penelcom fell into place through a NAM. And, I would say I got to thank Sammy for coming on board. Sammy's faith brought on Gary. Gary's faith has basically given the whole world faith in my product.
Right.
Yeah.
It makes a difference, man. It really does. I mean, there's no doubt about it. To get to the right puzzle pieces in play, and getting those people, and it's a combination of two things, right? So you got the name recognition and the history, but it's also an artist who gives a shit.
Yeah.
And when you get one, I had a couple. Jack was a huge one for me. Jack Owen.
Jack seems like he's a really big. Jack seems like he's a big sweetheart too.
He is. He's a good dude, and I've had both business relationship and musical relationship with Jack for 15 years, and it's and I'll be eternally grateful to him for that. As getting for you would be the Sammy and Gary connections. When you first make those connections with an artist who really believes in what you're doing and they're willing to stand up and tell everyone.
Yeah.
To listen.
And I can't, and not saying that like other people weren't looking at it, but like Zach Jeter, Niall's newest guitarist. Mm-hmm. Zach and I have been talking kind of on and off, following each other through his project Olkoth. And Olkoth was kind of like a fish. It's kind of like I almost felt like Olkoth was like for a while was like the AAA team to Niall. Because Zach's original bass, or like one of Zach's bassists, was in Niall for a long time, and then Lectress Nocturne as well. They're all such a tight knit group, and I think that just gave Zach, once he got on with Niall, was like, hey dude, I'm getting my first paycheck. I've been wanting to work with you for a while now, and now I have the funds. And then Zach's doing vocals in Lectress Nocturne, and Lectress Nocturne. Friends with a couple guys in Cannibal Corpse, and now I have a member of CC, in my phone book. I try not to bother these people, by the way. That's the number one thing I've told myself is like, look, I know you're a fan of these people, but they don't want to fucking hear about I just had the best turkey sandwich, man. I give everyone respect, space every so often, it's, hey, happy birthday,
yep.
Hey, I see you're going on tour, kick ass. I try, if you want to be chummy with me and you want to write me every day, I'm cool. I'm an open book. But I joke with people. I say, it's like, yeah, I'm on a first name basis with these people, but they're not quite inviting me to the barbecue. We're not on that level, doesn't mean, they're not cordial to me, that they're not, that everything, but like you've said, dude, there's some phone numbers in my phone I never thought I would have.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I very much very much agree with that, but I think about that through like my musical career and everything that I've done now is I feel like right now, well, last 6, 7 years of my life has been like a big giant bucket list,
Yeah, oh,
from
yeah,
and
just
now,
went off.
and the podcast is no different from that, but
Yeah,
it's like I've become addicted to it to a certain degree, as far as finding out, and I think it's really what led into the podcast happening is finding out what really makes people tick. And, these people that you were so heavily influenced by to make business decisions, to make musical decisions, to make full life changing decisions. What do these people like? I don't even
yeah,
know.
yeah.
Like a
I feel
lot of
like,
people don't.
yeah, and like you said, I'd say it's the culmination of working with companies I would have loved to have. Like, let's say I didn't have a cab company. I loved Eminence since the inception of the Crankstein cabs, and specifically, what helped me actually get on a first name basis with the driver was Metalocalypse.
Mm,
Metalocalypse when it first came out, um, they were crank endorsers,
mhm.
and they had the Krankenstein cabs. I'm like, and I nerdy me, man. This is the good tinkering part of my brain. It's like, what makes that cab special? Like, why, and I found out those were loaded with Texas heats. So
Mhm.
Eminence would have been, I mean, I hate to say, dude, like when baby ducks are born, the first thing they see, they imprint upon as being their mom. Dude, that's kind of what happened with me early on. Is Eminence was imprinted upon me as being the speaker that would provide the tone I wanted. So I would have loved to have Eminence in my product, regardless of if I owned a cab company.
Mhm.
Um, Once I'm trying to think what else. I probably would have eventually learned how to do the stuff I wanted to anyways with my cabs. I just would have done it to my personal Mesa Boogie eventually, like the LED halo stuff or art mesh. I would have had the drive to figure out how to do that anyways because I'm I'm a tinkerer, man. I get that, like I said, from my father who's a gunsmith. My grandpa was a clockmaker, so I loved building with Legos. So, like I said, I've always had a weird tinkering gene.
Right. Right.
I've taken stuff apart just to see how it works. I've gotten lucky with putting it back together correctly in some cases, but I think it's the relationships, but also like as much as NAM is getting hard to do, it constantly validates me that um, I'm doing the right thing.
Right.
And one of those is pissing off the neighbors. I remember, I know we have oh boy, what's the best way to put it? We get the beautiful title of, oh, that death metal booth. Not said enthusiastically by the people around us, but like, oh, Arachnid, that death metal booth over there, like, good, fuck you, dude.
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah,
tired
that's
of
how I was too. Going there, it's like, man, we were loud
yeah,
and it was a constant halo of people because, and again, it's just testament to this genre again is I'm sure your area is the same way as those people
we get
walk through there and the fans all immediately are like, I can relate to that company.
yeah. What's also happening is Nam is so riddled with everybody making a fucking super strat, everyone making a Les Paul copy, bunch of fucking slap bass. Sorry, bassists out there. I know you like slap bassing, but when you hear, and this is the thing, I don't think we're as loud as Nam always claims we are. Ooh, you're really loud. It's like, nah, man, it's because everyone else is playing fucking surfer rock and slap bass.
Yeah.
And what we're doing over here is super distinguishable tonality wise from what everyone else is doing. We're an easy target to come and be like, you're being too loud. No, we're fucking not. I've got
Hmm.
decibel meters. I remember last year, I snapped. I was told by one of my booth mates that suppose this guy on the other side was really like mad at us. And I said, Captain Kangaroo can go fuck himself because I'm paying a shit ton of money to be here, and my artists are here, and and my artist relations, Robbie, kind of went over there. He's a bigger dude than I am. Like, I'm not small. I'm short, but like I know I'm kind of somewhat stocky. But Robbie is taller than me, and he went over there. He's like, "Hey, question. You're like, are we being too loud? Kind of like mafioso style. Like, so what seems to be the problem? What's going on? What's the issue? Are we too loud?" And he told I could see in this the way he explained it to me. I could see his body language because he does that. He does this thing where he sits back and like kind of closes his eyes just a little bit, probably because he's smokes a little too, but he crosses his hands like you kind of don't know what he's thinking. But I wouldn't want to fuck with him because he's definitely we're great, but like this is a dude who doesn't fear speaking his mind because he got shot in his face twice, dude. Point blank.
Wow.
Yeah, he was in a carjacking like at a parking lot in like Chicago, and these two dudes just came into the car, carjacked it while he was in the back, and they point blank shot him in his face twice and kicked him out of the fucking rolling vehicle.
Dang.
And he survived it. So I told him, this is one of those things about cleaning up shop. One of the parts that kind of sucks about, going through endorsements is, Robbie's got to like, dude, are we here to fucking make shit happen? Or like, we're not kicking you off, but this is the direction we're going. Hop on the train or don't.
Yep.
Thing. This is what we expect from you. In the past, he's like, Rob was really generous to you. He didn't ask you for much. But now we're growing in name, we're growing and people are recognizing the quality. Like, you just keep up, man. Just supply us with some shit, to keep you relevant, to keep the product relevant. And but beyond that, man, I wouldn't trade it, dude, at all. And I've wanted to hang up a couple times, like just people I couldn't deal with, or like I felt people were expecting things from me, but sometimes that's all in my head. And my wife, I gotta give a lot of credit to. She's been like, "Don't stop. You'd hate yourself if you stopped." And she's right. I would hate myself if I stopped.
You'd just end up doing it again. That's what I did.
Yeah.
When I was with Blackheart, I was like, dude, I'm fucking done. Like, I'm so cooked on this thought that I'm just done.
Is that what prompted selling initially? Was just
that's why I sold. Yeah, I was so burned out. I was so burned out that I hated music, man. I didn't want to play. I didn't want to.
That's sad.
I had no interest in being involved with it at all.
Yeah.
And I sold it, and I had like a 1-year NDA or non-compete.
Yeah.
And I probably took a couple years, and then I was right back into my brain was right back into designing guitars again. I'm like, what am I doing?
Did Crimson come out after Blackheart, or were you
during?
Yeah, I was gonna say it was like kind of like the last year of Blackheart, or the last 2 years of Blackheart. You introduced Crimson, and Jack was actually one of your first endorsers for Crimson. If I'm
Yep. So Crimson was a cabinet company that I started out of kind of necessity at that time. Because I think, it was, again, I had artists that had to go somewhere, and I think I might have started that. So that would have been pretty early in things. I don't even know how up and running you were at that point or not, but it was like
I was probably into phase 2, or what I call phase 2 of the company would have been. I started. I'm trying to think if I was using Bluetooth. I'm trying to think where I was with the Halo system, because I went through several module styles, controllers. I was still like in phase 1 of the Birch era cabs, because I was initially building them out of pine for the first couple. And then I'm still hand doing everything. No CNC quite yet.
Because there wasn't much going on at that time, because I know it was like even Vader was real
I think
random, like he would do cabinets, and then but he was having health issues at that time, so it was like
Adam's situation's really sad, man.
Yeah.
For those who don't know, I have much respect from Vader. If you can't tell that Vader was a huge bass influence of mine, then COVID happened and Adam flew out to my shop because I was starting to I was picking his brain about CNC, and he wasn't doing Vader at the time, and basically his body thinks his back is broken. So it's constantly sending calcium deposits to his spine to fix a break that doesn't exist. So therefore it's fusing his back.
Yeah, he's such a good dude. I mean, I've had a good relationship with Adam for a long time. I did 4 cabinets with him before I was ever involved in manufacturing anything. So I've had Vader cabinets forever, and but I actually just talked to him yesterday. But he's a stand-up dude. And the other thing that I've really loved about him is from what I can tell from my relationship with him, is he just is very much like I am. Is like, if you're contributing and building within the scene, then I'm going to support what you're doing the best way I can.
He was really cool when he came out to my shop. Like I said, COVID just started. It wasn't as crazy with lockdown. So COVID started in March. Adam flew out to my shop in June because I was furloughed and I got a desktop CNC, and he wasn't doing Vader at all. So he had no problems coming out. And he was telling me about bits I should be using, certain depths for certain things. I modified a couple things myself, but because of him, I'd like to say the cabinet community, I don't want to say the entirety of the guitar community is like this, but the cabinet community has always seemed to be like, I talked to Sean when he was doing Ward cabinets. I've talked to a lot of people who do cabinets, and hey, what are toolings? What kind of bits do you prefer to use? And we're over here, we're willing to talk shop, and I'm not saying you're not, but like, it just seems like, god damn, the guitar community, dude,
is not like that at all.
Yeah, they want to sue you. Like, I'm gonna sue you over how long you've put a maple neck in an oven to brown it up and stabilize it. Like, Jesus Christ, bro. Like,
I sat for a while and collected my cease and desists and my letters.
No shit, you got no, bro. Ooh.
Yeah, man, it just stupid shit, stuff, because it's like this weird deal where you got like a 3% tolerance, right? So if I change something within 3% and it doesn't fucking matter what your patent, trademark, or this, that, the other is, it doesn't matter, but right?
Your shapes were, dude, they had like a home base core. Like, oh, I could see what shape he got that from, but your shapes were fucking drastic enough.
Well, there's one company that used to hit me all the time, and I would just get to the point where I just throw them away. It's like, I don't even fucking care, because it's the same company, not every time, but primarily that would hit me. And they're one of the largest guitar companies out there, and I'll just say it was fucking ESP.
No
all
shit.
The time. And it was like, talk about a company that fucking has every knockoff body shape on the planet, and you're fucking telling me
lawsuit models are still out there.
Yeah. So, but it's that, and that's what makes it tough. I mean, their goal as a major company is to crush the little guy. So they're, and they would see, okay, well, Blackheart's coming up and they've got, this many artists and this recognition going on. I better fucking try to piss on that fire while I can, which sucks, and like I said, I just got to a point where it's like, what am I going to do? I'm not going to go hire a fucking lawyer. You either are going to sue me and I'm going to go out of business, or you're going to fuck off, one of the two. And I just got to roll with it, but it's a tough one.
That's why I'm sort of like it still kind of baffles me. It's a little humbling that even, like I said, I have a head shell because we're taking a Mark IV Mesa amp combo and we're bringing it just to do a head shell. That Mesa was like, yeah, we don't do that, but here's 5 companies that will. And I was, whatever number I popped up. But the fact is, they were willing to be like, yeah, go to Arachnid. You might want to go to Atlas. So you might want to go to.
That's pretty rad, man.
Whatever. Yeah. So the fact that my name is on their, tip of their tongue,
right,
as someone to forward this kind of information to, it's pretty humbling. And like I said, here's what I've always said, dude. The pool is big enough for us all to swim, and there's plenty of money out there, dude. There's guitars I like, but because the headstock shape is not cool, sorry. Yeah,
I'm not buying it. Yep.
Yeah, the neck is great. The fretboard's great. Your headstock kills it. Sorry. Yeah, I'm not giving you my money. I'm going to wait for the company that comes along and has that entire package plus the headstock. That's why I started doing what I did with Arachnid is, okay,
Same.
one company does Baltic birch. Marshall will finger joint, but they don't dovetail. Mesa Boogie will dovetail, but it's only if you buy their furniture grade shit. No one else was like dovetailing at the time, and I don't know if it's because I started doing it, but I felt like after I started doing it, like companies like I think Atlas maybe, I started seeing other companies finally start dovetailing. I'm like, cool. If that's just what they came to on their own fruition, dope. Hopefully, if I played some role in that, because I'm kind of guilty of talking a lot of shit on companies who want X amount of dollars and you're getting a joint that's glued and nailed together. When, I mean, these people have had CNC machinery for fucking forever. And I within a month figured out how to automate my dovetails. And if I were to ever get into retail, I already know what it takes to make sure every cab that comes off my line is dovetailed. It's like I've already done that. Like I would need like 2 machines doing carcasses all day, 2 machines dedicated to dovetailing, and 1 that I can dedicate to custom shop stuff or one-off stuff. That way the main ones aren't, being clogged up. And then a crew of 3-ish people, maybe 4 people knew what the fuck they were doing. And that's how I would keep manufacturing right where I'm at versus going overseas is the equipment. But it's like, if I can figure it out, these other companies can. And I get it. It's not as fast as just pulling a carcass off a CNC machine, gluing it up and putting a couple fucking staples in it. Yes, it takes more time. But as we talked about earlier, a cab's job is only a couple goals. 1, create an air pocket that's conducive to the magnetic induction that pushes and pulls that voice coil to where it can self-dampen, especially for our genre where we want those fucking surgical precision stops. You want the cab has to be conducive to that, but it has to be tight enough to make sure that the speaker self-dampens or dampens the way it needs to, but it also needs to be big enough for your low end not to be neutered. That does come with some impedance selections on the speakers. And secondly, it's got to be able to just get your fucking shit off the stage, man. Thanks for playing. Thanks for driving 3 hours here. Now get your shit off the stage so the next band could come and fuck off to the next venue. Here's your $100. And this is part, and I got to be able to slam it into a U-Haul and take it out knowing that my joints aren't going to separate.
Exactly.
The way I built it. And that's really all that's what the shell is meant for. People ask me all the time, so how does the wood affect the tone? It doesn't. If you use a dense enough material, it's not the wood itself. Let me back up. I guess the density of the material ensures that air pocket you built stays that air pocket. It's called infiltration and exfiltration. Air that gets in and out of a vessel that was not designed to be inside or outside the vessel. That's a HVAC term, since I'm a stationary engineer by trade, so commercial HVAC for the state. So that's a term that comes from my career that I do that helps me fund everything when customer money isn't. And obviously it applies to the idea of building a sealed box. So right. Or if you decide to port it, that is air that you're allowing to come in and out only by design. So that's really what the cab is meant to do. Let the drivers work the way they're meant to work. And the vessel that is that holds the drivers maintains some integrity for 20 years, and that's what it is. You can't really ask much more out of a product than just maintaining its structural integrity for that long. And that's part of what we talked about as being musicians. I know what that's like. Thanks. Get off the stage. Were you moving your shit? Hey, you can't move your shit here. You need to get it back wherever. And just that rigmarole. I'm in the trenches with those people. So right. I need my product it's got to last for me. So, again, there's too many companies that were It had one element that I liked, another element that I liked, and I combined all that to mine cabinets. And then I thought, why do you, as a guitar maker, Chad, why does you guys get to have all the fun with the aesthetics? You know what?
Right.
Yeah. Why is it that guitar companies get to have fun with aesthetics? And but also the aesthetic has to not ruin the functionality of the cab. Like
Right.
it's gotta that's why I'm glad Duratex comes in like 200 colors. It's still the same toughness, just in a different color. The Halo system, I had to do it in a way that looked professional, but didn't get in the way of the driver and everything. And splatters and all that. Like, so I just think it'd be fun. Cabs
Right.
can be fun. And bro, how many people don't give us any real stage production? And I mean, unless you've been doing it a long time and like you're your hometown's local hero, most places don't give a fuck about your stage production. They don't fuck about giving you a good light show. Why not have like your biggest piece of gear be part of your light show or your banner advertisement, like I said, with the art meshes and all that, make that your album artwork. Don't put your band logo. I tell people all the time, please consider not putting your band logo on the art mesh. A logo plate, sure, because you can get that off.
Yep.
But art mesh, if you're not mechanically inclined and your band breaks up, you're stuck with that project's name on the art mesh. I view it like getting like your wife or girlfriend's name tattooed
on you. Yeah.
It's like,
don't do it.
I told these kids that ordered some custom cabs off me back in the day when, believe it or not, a lot of people probably wish now they would have put an order in then. That's probably when I was like $800 for 412. They put their band name on the fucking mesh. I was like, don't do it, guys. Send me this artwork without your band name. And they put their band name on it, and sure enough, sure as shit, they were no more 4 months later. So, yeah.
So you had mentioned that you do backlining and stuff. You got anything upcoming where people can check out your stuff and hear this stuff live if they haven't heard?
Yeah, actually, I need to make sure that contracts are getting finalized with the Vegas Unalive Fest. So there's the Vegas Unalive Fest. If anybody lives in I'd say anybody who wants to try to hear a cab, if they were to message us directly and be like, what's the best way to hear a cab? We can get your location. And a lot of our artists are super chill with like, hey, you're kind of close. Come to my studio. Feel free to play with the cabs. And that's the kind of community I've wanted to build with our artists as well. Not just you're a walking billboard, I'm a walking billboard. There is a lot of family because it's that musician on musician relationship, and they totally understand the brotherhood of trying to help expand. So there's that. I've had a lot of guys say, hey man, if anybody in the surrounding area ever wants to try an Arachnid and they hit you up, just hit me up and I'll make something work. I'll open up my schedule, go to my studio. Some of it I'll even offer to, like, I'll drive like an hour. So I've had some, the artist rosters like a family and friendship as it is, and these are all people I would have at my house. I'd introduce my kids to, etc. And
Awesome.
that's the culture. But yeah, so like I said, the Vegas Unalive Fest is coming up. I have impulse responses, which is one of the more affordable ways to test drive a cab. So if you don't ever see me at a festival backlining and you're kind of itching to try a cab with very minimal monetary loss in terms of buying and something, there's impulse response packs. We are trying to, I know Adam right now is he's got a batch going on. I know he's doing is it Milwaukee Metal Fest right now? Is he? I think
maybe. Yeah, maybe.
But typically, if you ever get on Sal Sick and Living Productions Los Angeles Extermination Fest, that's gonna be a backline of cabs. That's going to be backlined by Arachnid Cabinets. So Los Angeles Extermination Fest, I think, is coming up in a few months. So everyone will be playing through Arachnids. My co-owner, Robbie, lives out in Minnesota. He's got a backline of Arachnid cabs. So anybody who wants to have a backline or go out and test them, Robbie's always available. And I typically let people use my stuff whenever they need. Whenever I play shows, like, if you want to leave your cabs in your car, I'll backline mine, and everyone's free to use them. So
Awesome.
yeah,
Awesome. Well, dude, I appreciate you taking all this time and kind of sharing your history and getting a good insight into your band and your businesses and all that stuff. I mean, it's something that I think a lot of people can aspire to look forward to, especially younger people, on the different ways you can contribute to the scene without playing an instrument.
yeah,
There's so many facets of branches on the tree to do, from screening shirts to making guitars to
yeah.
a number of things.
Photography, you
Yeah,
know, like your local scene needs some really sick photographers,
yeah,
and you know, be the next Zach Oren, be a studio. Everyone, you know, you know how it is. Eventually you can't be the cheapest option on the block because you've paid your dues, you've
hmm
spent some time doing it, but you can be that guy if you at least strive for perfection. You could be that person that's coming up with your homies. Like I need the practice engineering, you need the practice being in a studio, and you need something to record. Be that person. And like I said with you, you know how it is. Our peers are going to respect what we do, but it's really the younger kids that are coming up that are really trying to shape what they're doing. So, I'd say any kids listening to this and you're looking at all of us like, oh, it's so inspiring. Start now. Start now. Seriously. If what we do inspires you to start a business, like I said, your local scene needs photographers. And then next thing you know, you can be in so many years, you might be the photographer that Cal Decapitation takes out on their next tour, that Aborted takes on their next tour. You might come across an OG band like Exodus still touring, and they need a tour photographer. And sometimes those positions make more money than the bands do, or the members individually make. You know, be a driver. Seriously, help your
yeah,
homies. You'd be
yeah.
surprised what kind of eventually sticks and pays. Um, you know, I just took my love of two things. I've always loved building and crafting, and I've loved music. And I thought, how do you do both? Um, and it's not only how do you do both, but have a thick skin, everyone. Anybody watching this, it's people who just fucking hate are just people who got nothing else going on in their lives, man. That's
Yeah.
easy to
I,
get
I
by.
I think it is a plus being a musician first before doing any of that. It's a thing I learned at a really young age, is if you're going to stand on a stage, someone's going to throw a tomato,
Oh,
and it's
that's
just,
like a good bro. I've never heard
it,
that one. That's great.
so it's like, whatever, it does, I still read every review that comes out that I can get my hands on. You know what I mean? Of every release I put out. It's just hard not to. But at the same time, it's like, I'm not in it to please everybody.
Yeah,
You're never going to please everybody. So you got to kind of have a little strainer and a filter, but
yeah. There's
survive it, get a thick skin, and
oof. Yeah, someone told me when we put the EP out, someone's like, "This vocalist is worse than the second, or then this vocalist is worse than the first." And I was like, "Yeah, but like I'm also playing guitar and doing all that, So
yeah, it's
excuse
just that everyone's going to
me.
bitch and moan about something.
Yeah, but
Well, cool, brother. Well, thank you very, very much. It's been a pleasure talking to you, and I know that we'll have some good conversations again in the future. I think there's a lot for you and I to talk about
yeah,
and to connect
absolutely.
on. So I'll get all of your information from you. So anyone who's looking to reach out and get in touch with Rob here, I'll have all of his information in the description here, and reach out to him, talk to him if you got questions. He's obviously a guy who's willing to share some insight and get you hooked up with what you need
Yeah,
and
I'm
point you in the right.
very personable. I talk.
Well, thanks, my man. I appreciate it. And, we'll catch up here. And, like I said, get me all your information and anything I can do to help you out in any way. You just ask. And I'm going to do the same thing with you. So congratulations on, your success. And I wish you nothing but the best moving forward. And hopefully, these next few years bring you some good momentum.
And same with you, man. You were a good inspiration coming along when I was starting to. I was able to kind of pick your brain about things. You were always rad about that. You were a good support system while I was
I
coming up
appreciate it,
as
man.
well.
I appreciate it. So it's my pleasure. So I'm just glad you're still fighting the fight. So once you make it this far, there's no point in turning back.
No, not yeah. Until the day I drop dead, there will be arachnids in the world.
Awesome. Well, cool, man. Well, thank you again, and have a good night. And look forward to seeing what you got packing for the next future here. So
absolutely.
All right, brother.
Later, Chad.
Later. Thank you.